we're going to be making an objective system in Unreal Engine. And to do that, I'm just going to load up the first person template so that we don't have to set up inputs and things like that. So I'm going to make the project. And we're going to start off with a really simple objective, something like pick up 3 cubes, so that we have a reference point, we know what to do and how to test it. So let me get in here in the blueprints. And the first thing I'm going to make is a structure that's going to be a basic objective that we can reuse for all of our objectives. So this thing is going to have the current status of the goal and the desired status of the goal, and then some text display like a title. So that current status is going to be, let's say, current value. That's just going to be an integer, and let's make a max value, which is going to be our desired thing. And by default, the max value is going to be 1, and we're just going to add a title so that if there's some UI, we're going to know what to display on the screen. Alright, so now that we have that, we can make something that manages all the objectives. So that could just be an object that we're going to put in our character, so objective manager. And this objective manager is going to keep track of all the objectives. And what this is going to be a dictionary. So it's going to have a key and value pairs. So the key is going to be strings, and to make it a dictionary, I need to say string over here and go down here and select a map. So that thing is basically like if a dictionary has a word and a definition, this thing has a key and a value. So because we've already made our objective structure, we could just put it over here in the value. Here we go. So now if I compile this, we're going to see that I can add, let's say, pick up cubes. And I have my first objective, and I can add more of these. So you can see there's a little bit of a data-driven nature here. We can add a lot of objectives really quickly. So the idea is that whenever you do the action, you're going to come into this manager and change the state of some of these objectives. So the changing of state could be done by a simple function. Let's say increment objective. And so the way this is going to work is we're going to need to find an objective from this place, from this variable, and change its state. So literally, there's a function called find that looks for a name because the keys of these things are names. So I can just drag this thing over here. Say name. And so that thing is gonna look for a thing in the dictionary, and if it finds it, we're gonna store it in a local variable in the function, just so we have a reference to it. Name that objective. And now we can make changes to it. So incrementing is quite simple. We can just do, let's say I can split this and check if the current value is smaller than the maximum, just so that we don't go past the maximum. Get a branch out of that. We can get the current value and search for increment. And that's going to increment it in place, so we don't have to set this thing again, because the increment does it by reference. These two macros. And after that, we can just maybe just print some sort of status message so that we know what's going on the screen. Let's say, yeah, put the number in here. Okay. So we're gonna have to put this in the game. So I'm gonna get rid of all of these white cubes. And I want to make my own pickup cube. So I'm gonna make an actor that's just gonna be a cube. And I'm gonna make it a little smaller. So whenever this cube is hit by our character, so I'm gonna right click the cube and add an event on component hit. So whenever this thing is hit by our character, which in this case is first person character, we can, let's just destroy it to see if it works, if the collision works. So let me just add a cube over here. And here we go. The cube is destroyed. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to add a reference. So we're going to add an objective manager to this character so that we can do stuff to the objectives. So if I go inside the character, I can add a variable, call it objective manager, change its type to objective manager, and now all we have to do is construct that object, because that's just going to be an empty reference if we leave it like that. So let's go in the construction script, and we're going to say construct object from class, and that class is going to be objective manager, and this is going to be the constructed reference that we're going to put in this variable. So if I drag that here and say set objective manager, we should have a reference to it. And now just to test this, well, here we need an outer reference. Maybe just put this as a first person character. So to test this, we can just check if we have any objectives. So in our case, we just have one. It's called pickup cubes. So what I can do here is I can say objectives, get objectives, and I can just say keys. So this is going to be an array of all the names of the objectives, and I could just say get the first one just to test. Just to test if it works. So I can say print, and just print the name. And if I play the game, you can see that the construction script runs inside the editor. So maybe it's a better idea to put this construction of the objective manager in its own in begin play in the event graph. So what I'll do is just get rid of these, or I'm not gonna get rid of these, but maybe just put a sequence. This is some VR setup that I'm not particularly interested in, so I'm just gonna put a sequence, and then I'm gonna say paste all of these things that I did in the construction, put them over here. So now if I play the game, you'll see we have the pickup cubes thing. Alright, so we have our objective manager working. Now all we have to do is call this increment objective function from the pickup. Or in this case, whenever you do an action in your game, that's going to affect the objective somehow, all you need to do is get the character somehow, either from other actor on hit, or just say get character, get player character, cast the first person character, and get an objective manager, get the objective manager, and tell it, please increment an objective. And what you're also going to need to do is pass the name of that objective. So what I've done here is I've had to say this thing should not be a reference, so that it lets me type over here. And now I could just say pick cubes. This name has to match with the name of the objective due to the data-driven nature of what we're doing here. This is all because later down the line, if you're using a system like this, you could just have text files and you can have designers write these things up and they can be loaded into the engine with not a lot of work. So let's see if this incrementing objectives thing works. So if I play the game, and we can see a 1 in the top left and the cube disappearing, which means it works. So the way you could take this a little bit further, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to disable this fire thing. So inside this manager now, you can do a lot of things. For example, over here where you're printing, you can update your UI, or you can change some levels, reset the level if it's a fail state or something. If the objective has a failure state, you can extend this thing however you want. This is the core, basically, of what you have. You can also make a slightly more complex system where you have quests that have objectives in them. But this is the core that you would need to make an objective system.